Hello YouTube and welcome back to Kind Heart Homestead. My name is Ben and I'm up here on our off-grid property in the mountains of Virginia. Just behind me is our son's clubhouse. Swing set, playhouse, whatever you want to call it. We've had this here for just over a year. For Cedar's birthday in the fall of 2024, we wanted to have kind of a minimum viable product here. Something that he could swing on as we make progress on the clubhouse section. So he's been able to swing on this no problem, but one thing we've noticed is when adults get on here, this whole building starts to rack back and forth like this, and that's because we don't have a diagonal brace. And that's where these pressure-treated 2x6s come in. So in typical conventional house construction, at least in the modern era, we've gotten rid of diagonal braces in favor of full sheathing with code-required nailing patterns. And because of how many nails that has, it doesn't matter whether or not you have diagonal braces. Since this building is not going to be fully sheathed, we need to incorporate at least one angle brace in this weak direction. And I call that the weak direction because that's the direction of swinging. So the center of gravity is going to change as people swing back and forth. So rather than just wasting wood and putting up some angle braces, we decided to put the ladder here. And right now I have these boards and an actual metal ladder leaning on a 45-degree angle here. And 45 degrees has a number of advantages. First of all, that gives us the longest diagonal brace. If we had it steep, it would connect somewhere here in the middle. And that might be fine, but it's not going to be as strong as like this full right triangle hypotenuse at 45 degrees. That means we could get a bolt or some sort of large structural screw into that post at the bottom and that post at the top. And we might even be able to cut a little bird's mouth notch in both of these 2x6s to attach to this big 4x6 beam that all the swings are hanging from. It's also going to come in contact with this rim joist for the second floor. As many points of contact as possible is going to give us the strongest brace. So basically what I'm going to do today is just do some rough cutting, try to figure out how to make this attach to the rest of the structure. The board on this side, we're not going to have any issues there. It's going to be bolted in so many places against the building that there's no way it can sag or warp or anything. But this one is the one I'm worried about. You can see on the weak axis, it can definitely bow. On this axis, it's pretty strong. The problem is, it's just sitting on the ground. So over time, this side could sag into the dirt while the other side remains the same. So what I need to do is put our steps across, or rungs, whatever you want to call them, and then most likely drive some sort of stake into the ground on this side to hold this in place. I don't have any drawings for this yet. I'm just trying to play around with it, figure out what to do. Because I don't have any experience creating stairs with stringers or ladders for playhouses, I really just have to experiment. And when it comes to experimenting with lumber, you're going to waste some wood unless you just slow down and make sure everything works as you go. So my goal is to make both of these 2x6s match. So I'm going to replicate each cut from the first one onto the second one. And another benefit of the 45-degree angle is we could either do steps or ladder rungs. Obviously steps would be flat and ladder rungs would most likely be along the face, nailed like that, the easy way. But it gives us the flexibility to modify the design over time. So I think what we're going to do is use our 1x decking boards just to face nail some ladder rungs right across, but then I'm going to use an extra one as a spacer before I nail the next one. So then when I pull that space out, they're going to have a perfect 5.5-inch gap between them that we could go back later and face nail rungs in between to create a full ramp. And then we could put a rope up there or the rock climbing holds, any number of things. This is the best flexible design I could think of. So let's get started now. I'm going to dig the turf away where this meets the ground, just so I can assess how level it is, maybe put some gravel down. And then I'm going to start mocking up some simple rungs and cuts and just see how this sits. So stick around and I'll be right back. All right, everyone, that concludes day 1 of work for this episode 3 of Cedar's Clubhouse. As you can see here, we have a nice sturdy ladder. And you can see that 4x4 block that I cut on top of some gravel. I think that's going to keep everything nice and level, at least until I can get a deep enough concrete stake. I might have to temporarily remove one of these rungs to drive that stake. So if I can conceal it down in there, that would be best. But going up about halfway, it doesn't look like there's too much danger of falling off. But once you get any higher, that could become a bit of a risk. I know that all swing sets have some element of risk, so I'm not too concerned about it. We just have to teach our son what's safe and what's not safe. And obviously I need to get some railings around this upper part. But I couldn't really do that until I knew exactly where the stairs were going to go. It's kind of like a chicken and the egg scenario. If I put up the wall first, it might be in the way of the ladder. If I put up the ladder first, it's unsafe for Cedar to go up there without supervision. So I'm going to have to rush next time I have a warm day and then try to get some of those walls up. So let's see what I can get done next. This is a close-up of a 6x6 post. We have 4 of these evenly spaced at each corner of the clubhouse. You can see I used my speed square to trace out the material that's going to be removed. In this case, it's 5.5 inch by 5.5 inch by 1.5 inch, and it kind of wraps around the outside because that's where I have to recess the railing. I want it to be flush with the 6x6 material and not be bolted onto the outside of the structure. So now for the cutting. Sorry about the bad camera angle here. There's just not really anywhere safe to put the tripod while I'm doing this work. So my first 2 cuts are going to be from the top, going as deep as I can with the circular saw. Then I'm going across the bottom of my drawn lines. And then I'm going with a very long reciprocating saw blade straight down, connecting the cuts. This is not the best looking cut. I'm not gluing joints, so I'm not too concerned about it, but I'm not very skilled with a reciprocating saw, and it tends to bend and flex, and it's kind of a wide blade, so it doesn't really make a straight cut, but it's good enough
And then I'm getting the chisel in there to clean up the cut just a little bit before the next phase of this project. But first I have to repeat this for the remaining 3 posts. As with anything, practice is definitely going to be on your side. You can see how much cleaner this one is. Well, maybe not, because you couldn't really see the outside of the first post, but I can tell you that this was way cleaner looking than the first one, and I got better and better at each subsequent post. The cleaner cut I can make with the power tools, the less chiseling I have to do later. So now it's time to move on to the next phase, which is the actual cutting and installation of the railings. This is standard pressure-treated 2x6 material, and it perfectly fits into those notches that I did. And the notches were important to give this vertical bearing, so no matter how much weight you push on the top of these, it cannot fall off the building. Even without fasteners, the weight is going to be taken by the notches. Although I will put some pretty heavy-duty decking screws in there. But this is an 8-foot by 8-foot building, measured from the outsides, and lumber doesn't always come exactly 8 feet, so no matter what, I'm probably going to have to cut some length off of these boards. But first what I'm doing is just tacking them into place and actually tracing the line where the cut needs to be made, because there's always variations in lumber. These 6x6 posts may have twisted or bowed in any number of ways, and I don't really want to fight with a 6x6 post. I'm not going to want to get out like a tractor and pull ratchet straps down to that weight just to kind of unbow a post. So really I'm just trying to make these as flush as possible. So I'm doing the 2 parallel ones first, and then the first perpendicular one actually has to be 3 inches less to account for the 2 boards on the outside, which are 1.5 inches each. 1.5 inches times 2 equals 3 inches. So this is going to fit right in between those 2 parallel posts, and then I'm actually going to leave the third side open because I don't really have an idea yet for how to make some sort of custom floating banister where there's going to be a staircase in the way anyway. So you can see the ends facing the camera of those 2 parallel boards are a bit long. I ended up trimming those off camera, but don't worry, everything looks nice and flush.
What do you see, Cedar? Go climb it. No, not the metal one. I built you a wooden one. A big ladder. Look how big it is. Do you know how to climb it? You're taller than me. Oh yeah. Say that again.
All right, so we always kept him supervised without the railing on there, but as you can tell, I'm a bit apprehensive about him jumping around up there without any banisters. So let's get on to that. I got a bunch of fence pickets. These things have these little dog ear things cut off the corners. I don't really like that, so I cut them off. I'm not really sure where to get fence pickets that don't have that cut. But anyway, after I cut those off, I cut them into around 3-foot segments. Basically, whatever was left, I cut it in half. And it was the perfect length to go from the joist of the upstairs to the banister. And I'm just going to use a nail gun to attach those. You'll see in a couple minutes. But I'm using my speed square to make these cuts because I want them all to be 90 degrees. But I actually have my saw set at an angle, so I'm making a bit of a slope. It kind of looks like a routed edge, kind of a more visually appealing cut. but you'll see exactly what I'm talking about in a minute once I actually install these boards. So firing nails with a nail gun is relatively simple, but I'm not quite ready to permanently install these yet. Basically, I'm trying to figure out the layout that I'm going to replicate on all the remaining sides. I started by finding the center point, did some math to kind of figure out what the spacing should be, but before I had another warm weather day to work on that, Cedar was ready to play.
Whoa.
I'm coming the letter now.
Yeah, you walked across the bridge.
Do this now? I'm coming up. It does show you the Cedar.
Keep going. Nice. All right, I was hoping to pick up where I left off from the previous clip, and now that I have my nail gun and some short enough nails, I can really nail these off, but I don't actually like how they're hanging right now. I don't know if you can tell, but I put a level across, a 6-foot level, and the bottoms aren't really aligned. I'd rather the bottoms be aligned than the top. So I think I'm going to take all of these off and flip them upside down and set them on top of that level that I have tacked in place. That level will act as a positive stop to ensure that even though I can't see the line, when I drop each of these into position, they will all be level. And off camera, I went ahead and drew a line on top to indicate the proper spacing. So all I have to do is set them on that, use a short level to make sure they're vertical, and then just shoot them right into place. So I'm going to go ahead and take these off as the first step, and then we'll get going from there.
And now for the fun part. If you have any experience in framing, you know that a lot of the stuff is repetition. So once I have my layout and my lines marked, it's just a matter of repetition. So you can see I'm putting these with the bevel side up. I'm using the positive stop like I mentioned before, which is, in this case, a 6-foot level tacked to the building. And now I do the top first and then the bottom second, and I'm just using my level to make sure they're plumb. It doesn't really need to be that way. These are imperfect boards. Nothing is perfectly level, but I do kind of have some OCD tendencies and I want everything to look as nice as possible. And really, it doesn't take that much longer to hold a level while you're nailing than it does to just nail. But I like to let the finished product speak for itself. So let's break down the process for you a bit slower. These previous clips were pretty sped up, but this one is going to be more manageable to figure out what I'm actually doing. So first, I'm flushing up this level with the bottom of my 2x6 rim joists. And I'm just kind of using my fingers to flush it up. I'm not using any sort of speed square or other tool. But once I kind of hold it into place, I'm simply putting one screw in each of the handle holds. And you can see those are roughly like 16 inches from each end. And that's acting as a positive stop, which means it gives you something to set your material on, and it'll then hold it in place exactly at the level that you want. So this wall is a bit different than the other two. There's less boards because of the gap for the slide, but I think I stayed on the same layout as the other walls anyway. And the only difference that I'm going to have is the last rung is actually going to be a 2x4. That way we can have a handle bolted to it or something, because I don't want anyone climbing up the slide, especially Cedar as he gets older. I know boys like to climb up slides. I don't want him climbing up, grabbing one of these fence pickets and just ripping it in half and then getting splinters and falling off the slide or whatever. A 2x4 is going to be a lot stronger because it's actually meant to be structural. So after all of these are nailed in place, just 2 nails for the top, then I'm going down, and you can see there's a bit of give. I can flex these boards slightly to the left and to the right. So it's important to get these pretty level to begin with, but now they're going to be much more level, permanently nailed. Now we're done. Here's a close-up of 2 of the sides. Man, I just love the look of perfectly spaced and level and plumb pickets. It doesn't really get much better than this.
All right, everyone, that concludes the work on this phase of the project. You'll notice here, there's a bit of a larger gap on this side of the slide than there is on this slide. On this slide, there's about 1 inch to that post. And on this side, there's larger. There's a broken picket. I decided to just use it. It doesn't hurt anything. But I think a good reason to keep this gap here is so I can put an actual 2x4 here. That way, if there's ever a handle on it or if someone really needs to grab it, you know, kids like to climb up slides and grab stuff. These pickets are face nailed to the outside, and the nails are 2 inches, and they are ring shank nails, so I don't think they'll pull out. But I do worry about someone being too heavy and pulling this picket and it breaks. So I'm going to put a 2x4 here, and then we can mount things to it, whether it's a rope or handles, and it'll be a lot stronger than just pulling on this 1/2 inch to 5/8 thick picket. All right, so now I'm up top. You'll notice that all of my corner posts, these are 6x6 posts, I notched them 1.5 inches all the way around the outside for, I guess you could call this a rim joist. It's really just part of the banister system. But I didn't connect that 6x6 to this 6x6 because then it'll make it too difficult for me to get up here. So what I think we need to do is over the next month or so, Angie and I will be out here supervising Cedar as he climbs up and down. And as we climb up and down, we will take note, maybe with a pencil or some painter's tape, of where we hold on and where we go in. One idea I have is to put a 4x4 post through the deck boards, mounted right here. If that's not strong enough, it could go all the way down to the bottom framing. I'll have to install some blocking here to hold it, but then that would give this notched area somewhere to span a 2x6 across to. I just don't want to install that too prematurely because it's a lot of work and I'm not going to move it once I put it in there. And then similarly for this side, I don't know if we want to do a big 4x4 because the ladder's here. So I might just run some pickets inside this little triangle so nobody falls through. But either way, that concludes this phase. I'm happy with 3 out of 4 walls being up, especially since the 4th wall has the ladder here for support. If anyone falls, it's not going to be a full fall all the way to the ground. And even if it was, it's just soft ground covered in leaves around here. So anyway, if you have any feedback about building swing sets and playhouses, let me know in the comments. Obviously, if you see any safety hazards, I'm not a professional. I don't have experience building these things regularly to know what sort of hazards to look out for. So I appreciate your feedback, and I hope to see you back here next time on Kind Heart Homestead. Thanks for watching.